And welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. We had the jobs numbers today, and we got the J.P. Morgan Chase controversial settlement proposal with the Justice Department to talk about. And nobody better than Peter Morici, who is a professor at the Robert H. Smith School of Business, University of Maryland, also a Newsmax contributor. Hello, Peter. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm fine. Just trembling in fear from this Henry VIII, judicial system we now have. I mean, the president is shaking down J.P. Morgan. There's no other word for it. You know, they started investigating these mortgage-related securities fraud in this area 4 years after Mr. Obama took office, or about the time that Morgan and the others decided not to support the president in his re-election campaign. How about that?
Well, that's exactly what that was going to be my question eventually. If you see this as a payback for not supporting Obama in his re-election campaign on the part of Chase.
Oh, absolutely. More than that, Wall Street as a whole kind of moved away. But you notice they went after J.P. Morgan Chase, not Goldman Sachs, even though at J.P. Morgan Chase, most of the sins were committed by companies that J.P. Morgan acquired at the behest of the Bush Treasury Department. You know, Bear Stearns and
Washington Mutual.
Yeah. Whereas, although the sins may be smaller in what is now Goldman Sachs, those were sins that Blind Finds people themselves committed. It's just amazing how Eric Holder, exercises prosecutorial discretion. I like to think of the president these days as Henry VIII, but Eric Holder is a more insidious and less enviable character. He's the Sheriff of Nottingham. Remember the Sheriff of Nottingham in the Robin Hood movie?
Absolutely.
With Errol Flynn?
Absolutely.
He was just a little twit.
So Eric Holder is a little twit?
Well, no, he's the Sheriff of Nottingham.
Okay.
He's basically going out and doing the bidding. I don't want to say that about the man.
Okay.
He is a capable lawyer, but he unfortunately has a very political agenda these days.
Now, what about the rest of Wall Street or the rest of the big banks? I mean, is this going to be a domino effect? Is this just the first?
There are a lot of these cases going, and they're going to rip them off. I mean, the settlement is far in excess of anything that should be taken from J.P. Morgan, and you can count on more shakedowns. It would be fraudulent for me. It would be a felony for me to, for example, threaten you with fraud to get the upper hand in a civil, complaint, but not so the Attorney General. In the background, there are these. There's the potential for criminal complaints. As a consequence, the banks
doesn't preclude the Justice Department or the Sheriff of Nottingham, if you will, from going after the officers of J.P. Morgan Chase. And if a number of them are found guilty, they could dismember the whole bank?
Well, if a number of them are found guilty, they would dismember. That could result itself is found guilty of a major criminal violation. Historically, that leads to the closure of the institution. Now, J.P. Morgan is just too big as a banker to America's large corporations to shut it, but I could see it being dismembered. If I were Ford and others, I would be looking for an alternative banker. I would be looking to take my business someplace else. It's clear that Eric Holder is going after. Eric Holder is going after Jamie Dimon, much the way Robert Kennedy went after Jimmy Hoffa. I mean, that was an obsession with Robert Kennedy, and maybe that was justified in those days. But Jamie Dimon, I've never been a big fan of the big banks. If you go back and look at my op-eds, I've advocated breaking them up, and I've advocated replacing Dimon, Blankfein, and others that caused the financial crisis. But not this way. Not this way. This is just hot. And what are they doing? Look at the settlement. They're paying a huge fine to a cash-hungry Treasury. They were also giving the president money to spread around for political purposes. $4 billion for consumers who, were hurt by basically fraudulent mortgages. A lot of those homeowners really committed fraud. They're the ones who lied on the mortgage applications. They're the ones who took out loans they had no business taking out. All at the behest of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who's also getting paid off. This whole thing is a travesty of justice.
We're talking to Peter Morici here on the Steve Malzberg Show, professor, Robert H. Smith School of Business, University of Maryland, Newsmax contributor. You see him on the tube all the time. And Peter, we should point out that aside from, I think, a foreign TV appearance or a still photo, this is your first time on TV without the bow tie.
That anyone can remember. I used to do TV with a straight tie, but I don't think anybody can remember me this is my teaching uniform. I have my golf shirt on. I try to be relaxed for my students. I'm intimidating enough as it is, I'm told.
Now, let's get back to this one more question before we get to the jobs numbers. Do you believe that when they do go after the other banks, that this is going to be the template for other settlements, that they're going to say, hey, look, this is what we got, this is what we want to do, you got to cough up the same kind of thing?
This is a year's profits, and they can survive this $13 billion. The problem is all the other suits that are pending. Oh, I think they're going to be large settlements. I don't know if it'll be as large as this.
Okay, let's move on. And one more. You talked about Obama. You talked about this fits in with their philosophy. I mean, this is who Obama is. If you're a banker, if you worked on Wall Street, and half your salary was a bonus, and it totaled $100,000, you were evil. And how dare these bankers take it? If you remember back, they even protested. They gave the addresses. Barney Frank wanted the addresses of the executives printed in the paper so people could go to their homes. But if you're a TV star, if you're a basketball player, if you're Oprah, or if you're a Hollywood mogul, then you're not evil making that kind of money. And I guess if you're Obama and you're a millionaire, you're not evil either. But the bankers, and the banks, they're all evil.
Well, the bankers were his pals until they became disenamored with him. It just goes to show you, if you start to even think in a conservative direction, if the IRS won't get you, Eric Holder will.
Yeah, okay, that's true. All right, so the jobs numbers today, what we have...
By the way, they've got a division of labor in Washington. The IRS goes after the little guy, Eric Holder goes after the big fish. The sheriff of Nottingham, he was hunting down, Robin Hood. It was his minions that were going after poor Friar Tuck.
Yeah, that's
they couldn't even catch that poor little fellow.
Quite a division. I like the way you put it, the division of labor in Washington. All right, speaking of labor and the Department of Labor, unemployment drops to 7.2%, lowest they're touting since November of 2008. Only 148,000 jobs created. We're just in a cycle, and it goes on and on and on this way. The labor force participation remains steady, so that wasn't a factor apparently this time. But we're never going to get out of it at this rate.
No, we're not. We really need 350,000 jobs a month. I would characterize the president's economics team as performing as well this year as someplace between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New York Giants. Both are abysmal. Only exceeded in their disappointment by the Obama economics team. And by the way, did you hear his new line on budget negotiations? We need more money for education and infrastructure. We may need more money for both, but we ought to carve it out of something else, because what we've learned is spending more money is not the path to prosperity. I think that, Governor Perry has it down cold. That branch of Keynesian economics is dead.
But by the way, Peter, that might be his latest line, but that's the standard line from him and from predecessors. And Cory Booker used it when he was running here recently for the Senate. Money for education, infrastructure. It's the same spiel.
It's like creating parking spaces for expectant mothers at the Safeway. Everybody's for it, But if you have a town with say 100 people, 200 spaces is too much. Likewise, we've spent an average of $1 trillion a year in deficits with this guy for 5 years now, and that's kind of a lot, and I think we've gone as far as we can with stimulus. One of the basic problems we have is the infrastructure isn't good enough, but not because the country needs more spending to boost demand. It needs more spending, but not from the government, but it's because the government wastes most of its money. What about this? What about taking all of that money the IRS uses to hunt down conservatives for the crime of going to a Tea Party meeting, or that Eric Holder has been using to hunt down bankers? How about using the money? How about slimming down the Justice Department and the IRS to pay for some new bridges? What do you think would do more for American capitalism, growth, and jobs? Spending more money, hunting down bankers, tying them up in knots so they can't make loans?
Let me tell you something, Peter.
Or spending it on a few new bridges.
The next Republican presidential candidate needs you as an advisor, and not only an economic advisor, but as a speechwriter too. Because
I want to make the speeches.
Peter, I hope you'll come back. It's been a pleasure.
Take care.
Thank you. All right, Peter Morici, ladies and gentlemen, from, of course, economics professor, University of Maryland, Robert H. Smith School of Business. Without the bow tie. We got him without the bow tie. Do you know how big that is? It may never happen again. But he is so right. It is a shakedown. Obama and Holder despise the banks now, especially J.P. Morgan Chase. And this is what it results in. And Chase says, okay, we'll pay you $13 billion. Crazy stuff. 877 Newsmax, 877 Newsmax. You want to weigh in? Love to hear from you right here on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV, and radio.